Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Evan Abrams, and I am joined, as always, by the one, the only Brandon Anderson. Today it's simple. We've got Week 18 right around the corner. All these games on Saturday, and then you've got the Sunday games, followed by Minnesota and Detroit on Sunday Night Football, before we find out the entire playoff bracket and field. But Brandon, what's going on? How are you taking in this entire week? So much to talk about, so many different games and angles. It's a great one. What do you got here?
Yeah, week 18, man. It felt like we just started the season not long ago. I remember we had this new podcast. We're like, okay, 3 best bets. Maybe you'll sneak an escalator in there. Here we are, week 18. We got like goofy slate, terrible games for the most part. Don't worry, everyone. I got 7 best bets. I got escalators in every single one of them. Like, we're digging in. We had a lot of fun this year, and hopefully can close out the year on a good note. Plus, of course, we got the playoff games to come too. But 2025, rang the new year, ready for, a little wrap up football this week, a little kind of preseason type football. But I think we still have some fun angles here, ready to watch some games, college football on the days in between, just football every day in the holiday season right now.
Yeah, we're going to hit a point when like the playoffs happen and the bowls are done and everyone asks themselves, where's the football? But right now it is every day and all the time, which is awesome. But this week is really just a hodgepodge. I think it's the easiest way to call it. But the equal sign is motivation. And that's what everyone tries to handicap when you go game to game here. I think we need to start, and we're going to go one by one on a few topics before we hit your best bets. But we're going to start with, what is the biggest thing you really learned from week 17? Now, I'll let you start here, but the week that was before you got here, what is the biggest thing you think that mattered?
I think jokingly, the thing I learned is maybe we don't need football in 9 standalone windows from the NFL for the week. We got a lot of not great island games. And by the time we got to Sunday, the day with all the football, like it was rough out here. I know I missed the recap pod, but there was not a lot of recapping to recap on Sunday. So that was one lesson. Otherwise, feels forever ago now, but way back on Christmas, I thought the Ravens and the Texans just showed us they're exactly who we thought they've been all season. The Ravens look great, look like legit Super Bowl contenders with the Super Bowl defense now, in particular in that game. Hold the Texans to 2 points, really 0, because just the safety the offense gave up. And I thought Houston in that game sort of looked like and played like a team that their season was over. Like, oh, this is the game we got eliminated from the playoffs. No, you're division champions. That was your celebration victory lap game. I don't know about them. We've doubted the Texans all year. We've been backing the Ravens. I think that game just showed us exactly what we thought those teams look like heading into the postseason.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're pretty much on point there in terms of the teams that played well. The one thing I was going to say is like what I've learned from week 17 was kind of Buffalo's defense is still a bit of an issue and something I'm going to keep an eye on. I understood. Yeah, listen, 40-14, we get it. But the second Rodgers leaves, and I don't really know what we have left of Rodgers, Tyrod kind of goes down the field twice. And that's kind of what we've seen of Buffalo's defense. It'll be interesting to see who they get. But just some quick hitters on week 17. Kyler was Kyler, kind of exactly how we felt he would be, was what he ended up being. Jaden Daniels' run ability feels like it's going to be a storyline for whoever Washington gets in the playoffs. His ability to make plays is kind of something we haven't seen in a rookie, and it'll be interesting how he takes that environment. God, this week sucked was my next note, which is exactly what you said. It's just the slate was pretty terrible. I kind of thought that I don't think I knew by the end of the week, and now looking at Cleveland and Baltimore this week, that Cleveland is 4-12 against the spread this year. We've been talking so much about the Titans. I don't think I really knew how bad they were. They're on like a 4 or 5 game ATS losing streak entering this one we'll talk about in a minute, but those were my surprises, or at least things I was thinking about when it comes to week 17. All right, let's go to the next topic here, which is any future you would add entering this week, kind of before all these games in the playoff field is set. What did you have here? I have a quick thought after, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, just a couple to reiterate. We talked last week about Bengals Super Bowl ticket. The odds went longer now, even though the Bengals won the game last week. So 250-1. Obviously, it's a crazy long shot. They still don't have a defense. But if I get Joe Burrow and those receivers, I think they give me a shot And if I get in, Cincinnati would play at Buffalo. If they win that, they'd have to go at Kansas City. All right, well, they're underdogs, but we all know the Bengals can hang and score points in those games and have a chance. And then you're at the final four teams, and then you're at least at a hedge opportunity. So I think just a crazy nibble on a long shot. The other one we've talked about too, Packers to win the NFC is 8-1 now. Right now, I think we're getting a slight discount on that number. This is a team that lost last week, has not played well against the top NFC teams, but I still think the NFC is where the real sleeper team you want is. And right now it's a discount because the Packers are the 7th seed lined up to play the Eagles, unless Washington loses this week, which I think is very much in play. And then Green Bay moves up a slot and gets a much better path after that, if that's the case. Because that's a possibility, I think we're getting a little discount on the 8-1 number to win the NFC. I do think for NFC teams, you want NFC ticket, not Super Bowl, because I think the AFC team is going to be favored once we get there. But those would be two for me. What sticks out to you?
Yeah, I keep staring at Pittsburgh at 50-1, just knowing what they can do on defense. And the thing that's crazy to me as well is, I mean, the stigma on Tomlin has been he can't win in the playoffs recently. He's lost like a lot of games when you just look at the stats, since they've kind of had their glory days. He gets there, he finishes above 500, but they rarely win the games. But I still think 50-1 is a little long. And then I just thought this was interesting. Rams, Chargers, Commanders, they're all 35-1, basically priced the same in the market. So I was trying to decide to myself, like, which of those teams would I be most interested in? Probably in order, it's Commanders, Chargers, Rams, potentially, just based on who they would have to face. I know the Rams might get the Lions, depending on what happens here on Sunday Night Football. So just overall, some interesting thoughts. All right, let's go to the next topic here, which is Black Monday. It's just a head coaching topic. Like, if you had to predict which of these guys you think is going to get the slip first, I don't think there's a lot to choose from, since a few of the top candidates have already been let go.
Right.
But Gerard Mayo was one for me. Jeff Ulbrich, I think they're going to open up that Jets job either way. Antonio Pierce, but they've won 2 in a row. Like, I don't necessarily know if Davis is even watching the family in general. Like, do they care? Is Brady even watching? Like, I think they're probably moving on. But those are my 3 candidates. But I think, the Dennis Allen's already out the door.
Yeah, I mean, Jets, Saints, and Bears already fired their coach, so that one doesn't really even count. Those are interims. I do think those 3 guys are all gone. The interim thing has not gone well for guys that keep that job. See also Antonio Pierce. So I had a few categories here. I think Pierce with the Raiders fits in with McCarthy on the Cowboys and Stefanski on the Browns as shouldn't be safe, but probably are. I don't think those guys are going anywhere. I think the Raiders have a real chance to end the year on a 3-game winning streak. The Browns are just cheap. Jerry Jones, I don't know what he's doing. Those jobs, I would love to see something new for those teams. I don't think they will. Gerard Mayo, and I think Brian Callahan in Tennessee, if you had 2-14 ATS, you're doing something wrong.
Maybe.
First-year coaches, I put probably safe, but I wouldn't be shocked to see a team just try something new. Those are pretty stable franchises historically, so they're not necessarily like a team that I would expect to do something crazy. So I'm putting the number at 4. Here's the numbers I got for you. I think Brian Dable with the Giants, I think he's done. You start over, you get a top 4 pick. I think it's just time to get the new coach, new quarterback, kind of start fresh. Jacksonville plays Indianapolis this week. I think they're both done. I think both guys, it's time to start fresh. That division was so bad this year, and neither one of those teams even got close to contending in a division that was just there for anyone to take. So I think Steichen, the way the Colts lost down the stretch this season with the Jonathan Taylor fumble and then the game last week against the Giants, I think you just need a fresh start. I like Steichen personally, but I think they're going to have to do something. And Doug Peterson, with the funeral escalator like a month or 2 ago. I don't know how he's still working out here.
He's still hanging around.
He is. And then here's my surprise pick. And I'm kind of hedging a little bit. I'm telling you that on Monday, either Mike McDaniel or Zach Taylor is getting fired. One of those teams, maybe both, are missing the playoffs. I think that one or both of those teams are going to look real hard at, we think we're Super Bowl contenders. We're not sure we can get there the way things are looking right now, and we can't do a lot of other changes. Where we make a change, maybe the head coach. What do you think about Taylor and McDaniel?
Okay, so I was gonna say Taylor because Taylor's always on my list. McDaniel wasn't one I even really thought of, but I do think that's a good dark horse. The one thing you got wrong on Zach Taylor is they're going to do it Sunday morning, right? Like they lose
Yeah, you're
Saturday,
right.
they lose Saturday night. Like you're going to wake up trying to figure out what's going on in the playoff race, and they're going to be like Zach Taylor got fired. But that is most likely the scenario. I think the Dable one is kind of interesting. I mean, finishing a little hot. They like him as a head coach. I don't know. That one would be interesting going that direction, especially if you keep winning and you end up getting like the 7th or 8th pick. Kind of a crappy situation there. But all right, let's keep going. Award season. Basically, the question here is, can any award be impacted by what will happen in week 18? And obviously our opinions. You can go first here, and I have a quick thought.
Yeah, I think there's one. I don't think MVP is going to be up for grabs. Josh Allen's not expected to play much, and Lamar Jackson's playing a preseason game against the Browns. So I think that topic is done. Thank God. I can't handle any more MVP discourse this year. I think DPOI still is up for grabs this weekend. We saw in the middle of this week, finally, TJ Watt, who I think has been the favorite ever since Aiden Hutchinson got hurt, finally is no longer the favorite. Patrick Surtain passed him mid this week, which that should tell us something that's better, is if in the middle of the week, not because of a game, not because of anything that happened, but because of like social media conversations, basically, suddenly caught a lot of steam. That should tell you to be careful about, like, don't just look at the book and the odds and be like, oh, okay, well, Surtain's going to win. Like, no, this is just like some Twitter people decided to have a conversation and all put their money on it and chase the steam that way. Both of those guys are playing in games for basically that last playoff spot in the field. I think TJ Watt could have a big moment against the Bengals, knock them out of the playoffs, the hot team no one wants to face, or maybe Denver against Carson Wentz. Maybe Surtain has a big game or a big moment there. I think one of those two has a big moment, or maybe neither. And I'm not sure I'd be totally shocked to see neither one of those guys and some other crazy sort of dark horse at this point emerge. That to me is the one award that still seems a little bit up for grabs.
All right, one by one. MVP, in my opinion, I think Lamar on Saturday afternoon in front of an audience puts up 1,000,000,000,000 yards and runs around. And I think the angle you're going to talk about later is Derrick Henry, which the same thing could happen here. Like, I think the motivation to just being in front of an audience is interesting. I think it's, still a race, but I think you're probably right. It's over. Saquon's offensive player of the year is a lock. I do think the defensive player of the year is an interesting category. I wanted to bring up Kirby Joseph, who obviously 2 interceptions up to 9 this week. He's 20-1, but I just don't necessarily see how that's going to happen. I want to say Myles Garrett, but they're just not winning any games. So like, even if say they beat the Ravens, right? And all this crazy stuff happens on Saturday and he has a bunch of sacks, I don't even know if that's necessarily enough to like be a part of the conversation given the year. So I think Watt could do it in front of an audience, but Surtain's probably the rightful favorite at this point. Versus Rookie of the Year, I think Darnold could win this award Sunday night. Comeback Player of the Year. I think the one thing that could happen here is even if Burrow plays well and they win, and maybe Denver gets into the playoffs, so that storyline gets halted a little bit, Darnold at plus 170 being back in the market after we had this whole Associated Press, what is this award about? And then all of a sudden he's plus 170. I do think they beat the Lions, and the money line price is probably right around the same, plus 170 either way. I think Darnold probably has a shot, and O'Connell's already won that award. You don't have a win total of 6.5 and finish 14-2 or whatever and not win that. So that is my opinion of the situation. All right, this one's a simple one. What's the one game you don't want to have any action on this weekend?
I got 4, and they're all from 2 divisions. I'm not betting anything on the NFC West, so Seattle Rams, San Francisco, Arizona, and I got nothing on the AFC South, Houston, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Indianapolis. The 2 teams in those bad divisions have already won divisions and look to be resting. Everyone else, I got nothing. I have no props. I have no angles on that. I don't need to watch those games. I don't need to pay attention to them. Normally on any game, any given week, I literally had an article last year having a bet on every team, every game. I got nothing on these teams. I put like three minutes of prep into it and I was like, nah, you're out of here. Let's play some real games.
I have no interest in Buffalo, New England. I just can't even spend my time thinking about one series and all that different type of stuff. It just means nothing to me. I can probably find some sort of dumb angle on most of these games. That one I just have no interest in because I don't trust Gerard Mayo. I don't even know if May is going to play enough or if he should play. And Josh Allen's going to play one series to continue a streak. All right, let's talk Detroit, Minnesota quickly, just because just so big of a game, the playoff circumstances around it, and honestly how rare it is. But I'll let you start. Like, what's your breakdown here? What's your thought process? Um, kind of dive in.
Yeah, I wanted to put this one in the top because I don't have a bet coming up on this one. So for me, this is a no bet, but not as like those other teams. I'm already betting with my heart. I'm a Vikings fan. The whole region out here, me watching the game. This is being billed as the biggest regular season game ever. It might very well be because I honestly think this is a Super Bowl elimination game. I don't think that you can count on Jared Goff or Sam Darnold to go on the road with no rest and go win 3 road games in all likelihood and win the Super Bowl as an underdog. I think that's just asking way too much for Goff and Darnold and for what these teams are. For the game, the profiles of these teams are changing a little bit. The Vikings we think of as this really good defensive team with just enough offense. The defense has slipped to more like 7th to 10th, like bottom of the top 10. They're a top passing offense now. They've been a top 5 passing offense the entire back half of the season. And that, I think, is the key matchup here because we already know the Lions defense has slipped. We know that. But over the last 6 weeks, they are 30th by DVOA, 30th against the pass. And that is a bad matchup when you're going up against this red hot Sam Darnold, Addison, Jefferson, Hawkinson, the whole crew. So the total, I don't know exactly where it's at right now, but it looks like it's going to close as our top of the season, like 57-ish range. My trends pop on the under because the trends are going to tell you to bet under. That's just too high of a number. I can't do it. I took a couple of these high lines unders, then got like 80 points in those games. So look back in this matchup, 6 straight matchups, Lions, Vikings have gone 50 points or higher. So, and we got no Lions defense right now. You're looking like, can we make 2 stops somewhere in the game to get over the line? If you need an angle, I think Amon-Ra could have a big game. Vikings middle of the field is one area that they're a little bit vulnerable defensively. Here's his last 3 games against the Vikings. 106 yards, 144, 112. I think we just get a lot of quick stuff over the middle there. If you want to play something on this game, I think the only real way to do it is to bet whoever you think's going to win the NFC. So if you like the Vikings passing offense against the bad passing defense, 4-1 right now to win the NFC. If you win this game as Minnesota, I know it's crazy. You're the 1 seed. You're off next week. You might get to play Washington or Green Bay after that just to host the NFC Championship. You got to like home Brian Flores defense against either rookie quarterback or against the Packers, who they have dominated for the better part of both matchups so far this year. So I think if you want something on the game, my heart's already on the game, but I think betting a future on either the Vikings or the Lions, that would be the way to go. It's an awesome game. It's a great way to end. Not a great slate, but we'll be finally actually waiting all day for Sunday night is the real thing this week.
Yeah, this game is just going to be full of touchdown tickets. Like everywhere you go on social media, people are going to have 2 touchdowns and 2 touchdowns and this guy and 6 players. I mean, this game has a total of 56.5, 57. So everyone's just going to assume 2 dome teams inside a dome under the lights, assuming a track meet here. I did look it up. You said the best regular season game. So I was just curious. We've only had 6 games where an 85% win percentage faced an 85% win percentage in game 10 or later since 1990. And it's the first since Chiefs-Rams in 2018, which was the famous 54-51 game with like a 63 total. So I think everybody prays that is what we get here. Honestly, I only thought about what was curious about the Super Bowl odds, depending on who wins this game, obviously with the 1 and the 5 in terms of the seeds. And I thought Minnesota is just interesting. They're 6th at 8-1, while Detroit is 2nd at 370. If Minnesota wins the game, I just feel like there's an opportunity, as I think you alluded to. I also think there's an opportunity in Super Bowl matchups. Like if you think Minnesota wins the game, maybe doing like a Minnesota-Baltimore or whoever you kind of like in the AFC to match up with them. I mean, at the minimum, they don't have to play a week. if they win the game.
Yeah.
So those odds should be interesting nonetheless. And I believe the loser goes to either Tampa Bay, Atlanta, or the Rams. I think something of that nature. So we will see how that goes. All right. Now, before we get into all these bets, I just wanted to quickly go over week 18 thoughts. Like, what are you, this is a completely different week than really the other 17 weeks. And I know you have names for different weeks. You've got like the kitchen sink week and you've got all that different type of stuff. That's kind of what you get here. So the way I had looked at week 18 is when you can see the finish line, right? Like, I think there's a different motivation factor for teams who are out of the race, maybe weeks 13, 14, 15. But once you get to week 18, it's like, okay, maybe I can get myself up for one last game before I have a bunch of months off and I go to like Cancun and all this stuff. So I do think week 18 brings a different motivational factor. Player rotations also is like a humongous thing in week 18, in my opinion. How long people are going to play, when they're going to play. It's almost like a preseason game. And incentives. Obviously, it's a massive conversation, but I do think sometimes it works both ways a little bit. Like, does the team want it? Does it actually matter? Because if the team's trying to win anyway, they're just going to go with their game plan, right? Like, they're not going to change a game plan if they're trying to win a game to get a guy an extra 15 receiving yards. So I do think those are my thought processes in terms of week 18. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you on the player incentive thing. I think that has become almost too in vogue. Like, everyone's got the post up, but I know you have it in yours. Like, it's good to know who the players with the incentives are, but like, let's not be crazy. The books also know who's got the player incentives. Like, they're setting the lines accordingly. They're reacting to the bets coming in accordingly. I'm not sure that sort of that market is like, I think it may be tapped out a little bit on most of those. So I don't do a lot with the player incentives. I do have one that we'll talk about later, but I think you have to kind of get creative with how you want to do that sort of angle. Maybe the incentive I like is on week 18. So I would encourage you, as you're listening today and playing these are aggressive bets. You're going to hear a lot of long shots today. We know I love that, but I think week 18, if you're going to bet, I think you have to bet aggressively, because I have lines this week by my model that are off by 5, 6, and 9 points from what the NFL model is. Like, a lot of bettors don't have a line that's off by like a half point or a point, and then that makes them bet it. Off by 9 is preposterous. Like, I clearly must be way off on this, but if I'm right, I must be way right, and I better bet it really aggressively, not just like play a spread bet. So I have 7 bets today, but my 7 bets are really like 20 bets, because there is a bet, and then there's, okay, but if it is this way, then what's the aggressive way? What's the escalator way to play it? So with the incentives, we've like, there's a very obvious one that I'll come back to. The Steelers play Sunday or Saturday. The Raiders and Chargers play on Sunday. If the Steelers win, the Chargers are locked into the 6th seed, and that game becomes meaningless for them a day later. Maybe they're resting. That odds on that game are going to change if the Steelers win. And so you can parlay those together. You can sort of choose your own adventure on team incentives. I think the team incentive, more the player incentive, is the way to go here, and say, okay, what do I think a team's going to do here? And if they do, what happens in the other game? And sometimes what happens in those games simultaneous? Tampa and Atlanta. Atlanta needs to win, and they need a Bucs loss. But what if it's halftime and the Bucs are up 21-3? You don't think the Falcons have the internet in the locker room and know what's happening there? Like, games simultaneous, you can sort of choose a path, script an outcome of, okay, if this game is happening over here, what's this team know about it? And what would they do about it? So I think you got to have a little fun, maybe down the bet a little bit to more pizza money size bets this weekend, but have some fun and go for the long shots. Less bets, more crazy ones is my way to go in week 18. I like it, though. I'm excited for this podcast. I got some fun ones today.
Yeah, week 18 is the best, and nobody knows a long shot like you do, so it should be a good time. All right, before we get into all these bets, wild card lines are out at a bunch of books right now. Just basically hypothetical lines. If this team plays this team, you are happy to bet this. They have a spread. They have a total. So I kind of toss this to you. What are you seeing of these potential matchups where the line might be, a point this way, a point that way on the total that you think there might be an advantage?
Yeah, two that caught my eye. Buffalo -7.5 home against Denver. I do not believe in this Denver team. So if we do get that one, Bo Nix on the road in like snowy Buffalo for a home playoff debut on the road for the rookie, just that to me screams a line that would rise at least to 9.5, because that would get teased into oblivion at 7.5. And I don't think books want to deal with that. So I would love the Bills there. And then if we get it, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, right now we're getting a total at 47.5. That's an under all day for me. I know we just got 51 in the match a couple weeks ago, but historically that is way too high. 47 is a key number. I think that would go that direction. And right now it's Pittsburgh plus 7.5. I don't know, man. All the history says to take the underdog in that matchup over a field goal. We know all the trends that way. We know about the rah-rah stuff and in this particular matchup. So those are the ones that caught my eye. What I really want that I haven't seen anywhere is I want Packers not at Eagles. I don't know about that one yet. I want Packers, if they move up to the 6th seed, give me them at whatever line they're going to post against the Rams or the Bucks. I think the Packers are as good as anyone in the NFC. And if they move up, that will be the underdog that I think has a great chance to win and keep winning next week.
Yeah, I circled Packers, Eagles, saying to myself, okay, I kind of like the 3, but I did put a question mark there being like Packers, Bucks is really what I'd be interested in, which is also why I think Washington plus 2.5 in Tampa Bay, which is currently listed, is interesting. Man, I would really love the 3, but I still think it's kind of free points because it's probably a pick'em game to me. Washington in Tampa Bay, even with the rookie. But yeah, Green Bay, Tampa Bay would be the dream. All right, let's get into these bets. So we're going to start with Carolina and Atlanta. You said it. This is Atlanta's entire season. They play at the exact same time as Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Tampa Bay wins, they're in. If not, Atlanta has a shot here. The stat I have before I toss it to you, Bryce Young's turnover-worthy throw percentage, to me, is probably the story of his season. It's at 2% since week 9. It was at 4.9% prior to week 9. So he's just really improved as a quarterback, not giving the ball to the other team. So what do you like here in this matchup?
Panthers Island, baby. We're finishing the season right where we started, back on Carolina, plus 8.5. And on each one of these picks, we'll get to the escalator. We're back one more time on Panthers Island. Actually, genuinely, I think this might be one of my favorite bets of the entire season. These teams are just not that far apart. I make this Atlanta minus 3.5. So this is a huge difference across the major key number, obviously. I just think we're viewing Atlanta all wrong here and viewing Carolina a little bit wrong still, too. So Atlanta, before the change from Kirk Cousins, they ranked 31st in DVOA the last 6 games before that. And I don't think a lot has changed since then. Here's what has changed. The passing offense has not. The passing offense with Michael Penix still ranks 26th the last 2 games by DVOA. What has changed is the passing defense is top 5. Is Atlanta really a top 5 passing defense these last couple of weeks or this last month or so? They're a top 10 defense overall? I don't know. I don't see that. Why would they be a top 10, top 5 defense suddenly? I know they're getting a little more pressure. I don't think that that's totally nothing. But look at just the team they're playing here, Carolina. Last week, I gave out Carolina, talking about them. Oh, they're a top 5 pass defense over the last 6 weeks. And then their pass defense gave up 1 million yards to Tampa Bay because defense is fluky and kind of goes hot and cold. And I think that shows you just how vulnerable and fluky some of those stats can be and how much I think Atlanta's passing defense can be. In this matchup, who's the better quarterback right now? Because I'm pretty sure it's Bryce Young, not Michael Penix. We've seen 2 games from Penix. Young's playing well. I'd take Dave Canales and the Carolina coaching staff over Atlanta's right now. So what's the advantage for Atlanta in this game? Certainly the run game. And maybe they just run all over them, and maybe that's enough. Is the defense really that much better? Carolina's defense has not been good. I don't know that I trust Atlanta's defense. And by the way, importantly, Atlanta's defense just played Sunday night, could not get off the field against Washington. They were on the field 77 plays, 42 minutes. That defense is exhausted, and I think that that sets up very poorly for them here. Here's some of the trends. Teams that have won 40 to 60% like Atlanta against a team 8 to 25% worse, 31, 77, and 5 ATS, 39%. Stuckey's trend that he talks about, a must-win team versus eliminated team the last 2 weeks of the year, 40%. That hits here for Atlanta as well, or against Atlanta, either way. Road team, failing to cover by 24 the week before, 65% ATS. That's in Carolina's favor. a couple others just as like coming off a huge blowout as underdogs, more trends in their favor. So I love this, but I think this line is way off. Panthers Island back one more time. Carolina plus 8.5.
God bless us. Hopefully, Carolina can give us one more ATS win this year, right at the end of the year, to kind of send Atlanta off into their offseason. All right, let's keep going here. Kansas City
Wait.
and
I've got to
Denver.
do the escalator on this
Oh,
one
yeah,
still,
you got
too.
your escalator. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go.
All right. So this one's quick and easy. Just set us up here. So Panthers plus 8.5. Panthers money line. I think Panthers win this game outright. It's plus 350. These teams split the season series each of the last 4 years. Atlanta won in October, so that means Carolina has to win now. And there's one other angle that will add even a slight more escalator. I mentioned it a little bit already. What if Atlanta looks up at halftime and the Bucs are rolling? Tampa Bay winning big against the Saints. They're 2 touchdown favorites. If the Bucs are winning big, it doesn't matter what the Falcons do anymore. And if they're in a tight game, are they really going to have that extra motivation, or are they just going to be like, you know what, season's done anyways, what are we doing out here? So if you think the Bucs win big, especially pulling ahead in the second half, as they probably will do against the Saints, who've been terrible second half, Bucs minus 13 with the Carolina money line plus 759. That's the escalator on motivation here. If the Falcons look up at the scoreboard and there's Tampa Bay rolling away, does Carolina just get this over the line too? So basically plus 750. Love that one.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff to probably do with like Mike Evans and Tampa Bay scoring a ton of points on that side of the ball, mixed with that Carolina stuff. As you said, I think there's some fun things back and forth there. All right, well, that's Panthers Falcons. So let's move on here now to the next one. We're going to do Chiefs and Broncos. Now, we got a rookie laying 10.5 and 11 points here. Just a crazy situation, obviously, with no Mahomes, no KC resting all their starters. The one note I will say, Andy Reid as a dog of 4.5 or more, 20 and 11 against the spread since 2003, KC and Philly. But honestly, more impressively to me, he's 27 and 4 in a 6-point tease in that slot, which means not getting blown out, which is exactly what you would want in a 10.5-point dog. So what are you doing here? KC, Denver.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs get blown out. In fact, I think they're in this all the way and have a real chance to win. So give me Chiefs plus 10.5 in Denver. And look, I know books are pricing in motivation. I know Denver has to win this game, but this line move is ridiculous. I would have this Chiefs minus 6 if they were healthy and motivated. And they're not, but that's like a 16-point, 17-point line move. Even with the guys out, I would still make this maybe like Denver minus 3 or 4 range. This is way too many points here for a team that I think is moving backwards a little bit. And the Chiefs have more than just Patrick Mahomes. Now, look, Patrick Mahomes, I think when we look back 5-10 years from now, is going to be absurd that the Chiefs are 15-1, back-to-back defending champions, and Patrick Mahomes is probably not going to be a top 5 MVP candidate in his prime. I don't know what we have to do to fix that, but it's not just Mahomes out. We're going to lose Travis Kelce. Chris Jones is out. But here's the thing. NFL rosters only go 53 deep. There's only so many guys that you can bench, and the Chiefs are not as top-heavy as we think of them. And beyond Mahomes, Kelce, we already knew Chris Jones would be sitting anyways with his injury. Maybe Trent McDuffie. There's not a lot of huge needle-moving guys that will be missing from this team. The offensive line strength, still there. There's only so many linemen. You got to play some of those good linemen for the Chiefs. The defense that's come back around. The Chiefs in the last 4 weeks are suddenly top 5 offense and defense by DVOA again. Top 5 pass defense also. These guys have to play. They can only bench so many players. And by the way, I know it's the backups, but you don't think that the Chiefs, who have won 17 out of 18 games, you don't think the team that is the back-to-back champs wants to go 16-1 and knock out the division rival out of the playoffs? They will be trying in this game. And I got my Carson Wentz jersey on. Here I am in North Dakota, like I'm not backing Carson Wentz in his one start for the year. I know all the Carson Wentz jokes. He's a top 5 backup. They go and get him for this moment to play when Mahomes is down. And don't forget, it's not just Carson Wentz. It's Carson Wentz and Andy Reid. And every quarterback for decades has been better with Andy Reid. Denver, their defense is their calling card, but their defense is down to 13th over the last 6 weeks. Basically league average against the run and the pass. I don't think it's a great team right now. And they're a tired defense. Like we just said with Atlanta, they played the Bengals. Now, it was on Saturday, But this defense was on the field for 84 plays against the Bengals. They gave up almost 500 yards, 42 minutes on the field. Defense has been worse at home. They've been worse early. The Chiefs defense has been better on the road. I think this sets up for one of those games where it's like, oh man, it's like 13-10 in the fourth quarter. Can the Broncos hold on and finish this thing off? That's where we're headed. You had the Andy Reid underdog stats. When he's an underdog of more than a touchdown, 8-3 against the spread. If you just bet any underdog game on the money line, Andy Reid, 26% ROI on the money line, only behind Mike Tomlin for active coaches. So rah Tomlin, we know we love that. We don't get rah Reid because he's the favorite every time. But I think this is a great spot to back him. The Chiefs have owned the Broncos 17 of 18. And one last thing, there's a small chance Denver might not even have to win this game. If the Bengals lose Saturday, and if Tyler Huntley and the Dolphins are just looking terrible, Denver is already in the playoffs at that point. They may not even have to get over the line at the end of this game, even though those are simultaneous. So, Chiefs plus 10.5, what I think is just a terrible line. That's the play. Carson Wentz, baby. North Dakota, let's go.
Yeah, maybe the Pittsburgh, what would it be? It would be Pittsburgh, Jets, Chiefs parlay on the money line, where all three of them just fall in their faces. I might have to put a few bucks on that one. All right. Is it you have an escalator here, or are we moving on to the next game?
So it's kind of a multiple escalator, of course. So Chiefs on the money line plus 450. That's the obvious pick here. I do think that the Chiefs can and maybe will win outright, and not really correlated, but Chiefs Panthers money line parlay plus 2,222. So put that one in there, just a little nibble. But then here's the kind of fun narrative escalator. You were just building one. What if all three need to win teams fall on their face? Here's my version of that. Just a little nibble. What if the Bengals look awesome? The Bengals go out and win on Saturday. They cover the -2, whatever the number is. The Jets win. The Dolphins, get them out of here. Who cares about them? Tyler Huntley, don't need to worry about that. The Bengals, the team nobody wants to face. Oh no, the poor Bills, and maybe the Chiefs will have to face the Bengals. The Broncos are struggling. The Chiefs are hanging around. Everyone's excited for Joe Burrow in the playoffs. And then the Bengals get over the line. Then the Broncos get over the line right at the end. So here's the parlay. Bengals to cover. Jets to win. Chiefs plus 7.5. Denver money line. So the Bengals win. They're set up as the team nobody wants to face. We're excited about the playoffs. And then it gets ruined, and the Broncos just like squeeze out a win against the backups from the Chiefs. And everyone's disappointed and sad, except us, because we hit a 13-1 parlay. A little narrative escalator on that one.
I love those. I'm gonna have so many of these little strung together by the time we hit the weekend for like $8-10 a piece. It'll be fantastic. All right, next game here: Steelers, Bengals. Before I give my stat, because I just have more of a way to kind of play your bets here and kind of add a few things to it to make it a little longer. But why don't you walk us into this? What do you like here? Cincinnati, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so I just gave you the narrative escalator parlay on the Bengals. But the truth is, I'm only just going to nibble down a little bit because I'm actually on the other side in this game. Give me the Steelers on Saturday, plus 2.5 at one book, plus 2 if you need to, plus 1.5. I would rather take that than the money line. We've seen the Bengals go for 2. We've seen them win or lose by 1 a couple times. So that 1 or 2 points may actually matter. But this is just a classic rah-rah Tomlin spot. Even if the Ravens win, Pittsburgh should still be trying this game. They want to secure the 5 seed and play the Texans, not the Ravens, and knock out the Bengals, your division rival. That's another thing to do. And they've been terrible for the last 3 weeks. They've just been home since Christmas, where they looked awful after they looked awful the week before. They don't want to be limping into the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak. I think Pittsburgh tries. I think they treat this game as business as usual, and I think that Pittsburgh should be favored. I would have this at -4 Pittsburgh. We're getting almost all the way to, I don't think we're going to get to +3 on the other side, but we're getting close to that now. I just see no way Cincinnati should be favored. And I know that's how books have treated these teams all season, but I don't see it. Pittsburgh, I know, has not looked good the last couple of games, but that was Baltimore and Kansas City. The Bengals are not those teams. Particularly, their defense is very beatable. The Steelers are on extra rest. They're at home. The Bengals, just mentioned, coming off that long overtime game that they had. Pittsburgh has a special teams advantage. They have a big coaching advantage. They're obviously better on defense. I know they have their flaws right now, but they're clearly better than Cincinnati. And then all the Tomlin stats. Let me just run off a few of them for you here. Tomlin week 5 forward as an underdog, 68% ATS. And in my Tomlin underdog rah-rah spot, I have noted that trend is better in the division. It's better in a home game. It's better as a touchdown underdog or less. It's better off a 7-point loss or more. This game checks all 4 of those boxes. This is a prime Tomlin rah-rah spot. It's a great spot to back AFC North underdog, 60% against the spread, week 14 forward. It's a great spot to just back a team on a 3-game losing streak, ATS and straight up, 59% ATS. And then Mike Tomlin, just against the Bengals. They've won 15 of 19 games. This is a team that he has dominated this franchise over the years. And then this may be one of your stats. I got it out of your column. Mike Tomlin, week 17 and 18, 14 and 7 ATS, 67% against the spread, 3-0 ATS in week 18. These teams close strong under Mike Tomlin. Steelers plus 2.5, get the best number. Again, I'd rather play that than the money line, but I think Pittsburgh is in a great spot to hang around here and make things interesting on Saturday.
I mean, it feels like every Bengals game does have the ability to go over. And if I look at it, here's some numbers: 44, 37, 20, 41, 24. Those are Burrow's points versus Tomlin since 2021. Now, necessarily, I don't know if the Bengals are going to win the game, but I do think they're going to be able to put up some points. So Cincinnati team total over 24.5 and Pittsburgh to win is about 7-1. Which is interesting considering the money line is short. So just an idea, Cincinnati puts up a ton of points there. And if you like Pittsburgh, feels a little long. All right. Is there any escalator here or do you want to move on to the next one?
I got an escalator on everything, Evan. So here's my version of the escalator. And this might be my favorite version of these escalators. Part of the reason I'm not playing the Steelers money line is because if you do think Steelers win, there's a better angle. And I've seen it out there. I know Anthony DeBundo, our old colleague, had this play. I think the guys on Six Pack ended up doing this play as well. If the Steelers win, we mentioned it already, they're the 5 seed. The Chargers lock into the 6 seed, and a day later have nothing to play for against the Raiders. Justin Herbert's been banged up all season. I don't know what Jim Harbaugh knows necessarily, but as a 5-point favorite on the road for LA, there's no way that line stays that high. So I want a Pittsburgh Raiders money line parlay. Frankly, I think that that's a bad line in favor of the Raiders anyway. 5-point home dogs, but the Raiders defense has been really good. The last 6 weeks, they've been the better defense than the Chargers, in my opinion. Patrick Graham's defense has been really good. They're top 3 against the pass, top 6 overall by DVOA. Chargers defense has been fading away. They were really good the first half of the season, not so good lately. A couple weeks ago, the Raiders were the Giants. Those were the 2 teams that were supposed to be the number 1 pick. They've won 2 in a row. Antonio Pierce, Aiden O'Connell, those guys are playing and coaching for their future right now. So I think if you want just the Raiders angle, I'd take the under in that game. Raiders games have gone under 41 in 5 straight. It's 41.5. So I think if you just want a Raiders angle, but you're not so sold on it, just ugly game, keep it close, whatever. But here's how you know the Steelers-Raiders moneyline parlay is good. You got to shop around because there are multiple major books that will not let you parlay this bet. If you try to put those 2 together, they know that it's correlated and they will not accept this bet right now. But there are books that do accept it. It's 5-1 right now. Shop around and get it. Chargers Raiders have split the season series 5 straight. Chargers won the first time. That sets up well for the Raiders. Get that parlay. It's way too good of a price. If the Steelers win what could be kind of a coin flippy game, you got a 5-1 on the Raiders in effectively a meaningless game for both teams. So I love that one. It might be my favorite escalator of this group.
That is an interesting one. I mean, just considering the circumstances about what you could possibly get on Sunday with the Raiders and Chargers on the other side of it, I could just see, I mean, Harbaugh has said, I think he has really one of the best quotes here, and I got to find, I don't have it here, but I think it's something about like, we're going to have the most motivated team in the entire world when it comes to Sunday. Yeah, that's until it doesn't matter. So
right.
We'll see how that circumstances works. All right. Last game here before we talk about incentives. You've got something on Dallas and Washington. Now this one kind of goes both ways, right? Like Washington needs the game, but there's certain circumstances that could be happening during the game that would make it go one way or the other. So what's your play here?
Yeah, I think this is low-key the second most interesting game on Sunday. Obviously, the Sunday night game is the big one, but this is going to determine where do the Packers end up? And that's the team I have my eye on for the long shot kind of path toward a Super Bowl possibly. I like the underdog here. Give me the Cowboys +5 against Washington. Really interesting game. We got Dan Quinn's Washington against his old team. We got McCarthy and Zimmer maybe coaching for their future. They certainly don't want to get embarrassed like they did a week ago. Dallas just won this game a month ago. They won by 8 points the week before Thanksgiving against Washington. And Washington in the last 6 weeks, which I think probably includes that game, Washington is 10th in DVOA. They're pretty good, but they're one spot behind the Cowboys. The Cowboys have been not terrible down the stretch. They just were out of it way too early for it to matter. But they've been league average offensively. They've been really good defensively. Not last week. They got crushed by the Eagles. But I think that Micah Parsons has changed this defense and made them really, really good again. And Mike Zimmer has found some answers with this unit. So Washington, the playoff team, their defense is the weak unit. And again, another team coming off an overtime game. Recurring theme here. We're getting a tired defense and then some trends that favor the Cowboys. This was one that was on the Panthers as well. Teams that lose by 31 or more that are then 4-point underdogs or more at home, 67% ATS. I can't really get to better than Washington -1 or 2 here. The must-win tax came in and put this price toward Dallas to where we're going to cross the key number. So I like Cowboys +5. And then here's my escalator on this one. Rather than the money line, which is also a bad number, if Washington drops to the 7 seed, we talked about this before, that's a great spot for the Packers to go get the win, move up to the 6, get a much better path. Packers -10 against the Bears. I'm not that worried about the Packers even after the Vikings, and I'm certainly not worried against the Bears, who are bad at everything right now. Chicago offense, bad on the road, bad from behind. Defense is bad early. I think that one could get away from Chicago. So here's the parlay here. Washington loses. Green Bay wins big. Green Bay sees Washington losing and is like, let's go, baby. Get out of here, Eagles. We get the better one. So Dallas on the money line +190. Packers cover the 10. Put those together. That's the parlay +457. And then the Packers, you want that future if that happens too.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. I mean, I still feel like there's an opportunity there, especially with all these games at 1 o'clock and then the 4 o'clocks kind of lining up where they need each other and have to watch each other, where there's like halftime. You probably get an idea where there's going to be some blowouts and some opportunities. So I do think having these like long tail parlays kind of in your back pocket for some pizza change will give you an opportunity while these games are going on. All right, so do you have an escalator here or do you want to get into incentives? Anything else?
That was the escalator. Let's hop into those incentives.
Okay. All right. So Philly and the Giants, we're going to start here. The only note I have, week 17 or later, Brian Dable, 5-0 against the spread, which, kind of goes into, is there going to be a spoiler? Are they going to win another game here? So what do you think? Philly and the Giants, which direction does this game end up going?
This is my one favorite of the week, and this is a little bit of a lighter pick here because the game doesn't matter, but I like the Eagles. I like Eagles -2. I know this game means nothing. They're locked into the 2 seed. They're going to, looks like, have Tanner McKee starting at quarterback. Did you see when Tanner McKee came in last week? This team wants to play well for him. It's a home game for Philly. They care about these games. This is, to me, a betting on team infrastructure and team chemistry sort of pick here. If this was a healthy game with the Eagles trying, I have it at least 14 for the Eagles. So how far down do you move the line with no Jalen Hurts? Now, look, with the Chiefs, we talked about them not being so star-laden. That's not true with the Eagles, especially offensively. No Hurts, no Saquon Barkley. Sorry, no record coming for him. No A.J. Brown or Davante Smith, I have to imagine. Not a lot of offense left, but again, 53-man roster. The offensive line's still going to be pretty good. The defense, that's been number one all season, still going to be pretty good. Vic Fangio, the coaching, they're still going to have a lot of advantages there. And this game kind of looks windy and gross. Lots of trends point under. But to me, this is an organizational win for Philly and a team that I think wants to lose for the Giants. I'm not so sure they just won, but the Eagles have won 6 of the last 7 matchups by an average of 20 points a game. They've won 14 of 17 against the Giants. And I think, look the way we bet this team a lot this year. We wanted Eagles second half, right? Because you just want a lead and just run the ball and bleed the clock out. That's the whole game this week. That's the only thing the game is just get through the game, let the Giants lose like they want to lose. And wouldn't it be, by the way, so New York Giants to blow the number one pick and then still lose ugly the next week and leave the bitter feeling in their mouth after they already ruined the number one pick anyway? Like, that just seems so Giants. And suddenly, like, Kenny Gainwell is rushing for a touchdown and Tanner McKee is getting a touchdown as A.J. Brown chucks the ball up into the stands. This is a vibes pick for me, and the Eagles are going to close the season on a win. The Giants are going to lose. Here's a fun stat that I looked up in Bet Labs this week. Teams that have won 10 to 30% of their games, week 17 and 18. So not like a winless team. They don't want to lose the last game. They don't want to be that. But as long as they're anything better than that, 10 to 30%, and they're on the road, those teams are 20 and 42 against the spread, 32% cover rate in week 17 and 18, failing to cover by almost 6 points a game. So I like Eagles -2, and I'll jump right into the escalator here. 2 different ways. I think Eagles cover and win big, probably. So 14 plus win is plus 450. 4 of the last 7 matchups here, the Eagles have won by 24 or more points. I think this could just be an ugly game where the Eagles are running all through the Giants. And then we've had a lot of just win baby parlays. How about a just lose baby parlay? I just gave you the stat about the Giants, the teams that are 10 to 30% wanting to lose at the end. So the Giants right now are tied with the Browns, Titans, and Patriots, all 3 and 13, all for those top 4 picks. Now look, the Patriots, I think, need to lose. You said you don't want to bet that game. Patriots want to keep that top pick. It's right there. It's 1 game away. I don't even know if Drake May is going to be playing that game. Watch them put in like Joe Milton for the second half or something. We got Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward in this draft. We got Travis Hunter, the do-everything receiver, cornerback, whatever he is. I think these teams are going to want to lock in now here, and the numbers from the past tell us that's the case. And the weird part is we got reduced lines here because these teams are playing the Bills, who are resting, the Texans, who are resting, the Eagles, who are resting. Somehow the Titans, who you've talked about as 2 and 14 against the spread, are favorites in week 18, which is objectively funny. But that stat about these teams fading, I looked up the straight up. So 10 to 30% win rate against somebody better than that. Since 2010, the team that has the better win rate, 72 and 13 straight up. So that's an 85% hit rate. They're winning by almost 13 points a game, 14% ROI in the money line. So just lose baby parlay. We're betting against all 4 of those teams, 3 and 13. So we're taking the money line for the Bills, the Texans, the Eagles, and if you want, the Ravens. You're not going to juice the money line much with throwing that one in there. But all 4 together is plus 558. Now here's what's crazy. If that stat tells us 85% of the time these teams win against these bottom feeders, 85% to the 4th times 4 times is still better than a coin flip. This should be like an even odds money line rating plus 550 basically, that basically these bad teams should lose. Like we all know they should lose and get a good quarterback pick, get a good draft pick. So just lose baby, fading these losing teams, betting on the Eagles, who I like best out of the 4. Well, and the Ravens, obviously. I can't believe I'm betting on the Texans here, but sure, let the Texans beat on the stupid favored Titans and then Bills or the Patriots. So Bills, Texans, Ravens, Eagles, plus 550 on the money line parlay.
You knew lose, baby, lose would include the Giants, especially this season. All right, let's go to the next game here. Miami and the Jets. The only real question I have is, will the Jets close as favorites again? Because why not? Right now, that looks like that line is down to basically 1 with Tyler Huntley starting right now, -1 for Miami. But honestly, I feel like we're going to get to Sunday and everyone's going to be like, Aaron Rodgers, last game. And Jets will close -1 or something like that. But what do you think there? What are you doing with Miami and New York?
Yeah, I looked at the Jets side here, and I certainly would lean that way, but I'm done with sides. I'm going to take the under. Give me the under 39.5. I think it's just an ugly game here. And look, Miami can win and make the playoffs if Denver loses. Nobody wants that. We don't need to see whatever's left of Miami in the playoffs in Buffalo. We already literally saw that game in the playoffs last year. Miami last week beat the Browns 20-3. That was not indicative of that game. That was an ugly game for both offenses. Miami's offense had a 36% success rate. They only won that game like they did because the Browns were 0-3 in the red zone, 6 turnovers, 4 of them on downs. It was bad. The Jets were down 40-0, getting run off the field until they got 2 garbage time touchdowns. this is a bet on Tyler Huntley, or a bet against Tyler Huntley, basically. If I ever see Tyler Huntley likely starting a game, as he probably is here with Tua and hip injury, I'm taking the under every single time. Tyler Huntley games, when he starts, 11-2 to the under, 31 points a game average in those games. When Tua has not played the whole game this season, here's Miami's point total. 20 last week against the Browns. Otherwise, 10, 3, 12, 10, and 15. This team can't score the ball 11.6 points a game without Tua. 64 drives, 5 touchdowns, 4 of them in the fourth quarter. So they're averaging barely over a point per drive on the season. The Jets, I don't know what's with the Jets. Did they quit already? Is Rodgers retiring? Will Miami quit in the cold if they know Tua's basically cooked anyways? Do they really want a playoff game to win a cold game in New York, to stay in New York for another week and lose a cold game in Buffalo? I just see a lot of ways that this just is an ugly, awful, don't even show it on a red zone sort of game. So I like the under 39.5. And again, I would lean Jets here, but I don't want any part of either side here. I just hope that the Jets do win, so we don't have to worry about watching Miami in the playoffs the week after.
Yeah, I think the under is probably the safest call because I just don't know which way you're going to get motivational wise. Like, I don't even think you know what Rodgers is thinking entering this one. Obviously, he'd like to get that Davante touchdown. But aside from that, and then on Miami's side, obviously going for the playoff spot, but without Tua, they have really looked terrible from a consistency standpoint on the offensive side. And if you look at the look ahead was 45, now down to 39. I don't know if that's enough of a drop. So what's your escalator there?
Yeah, mine is basically what you just said. Back to the Davante Adams. Well, I still like the Davante Adams touchdown. Rodgers is at 499. Now, look, I'm a Vikings fan. I would love to see him retire at 499 and just have the bittersweet feeling of no touchdowns his last 2 games off into retirement. I'd love that. But if he does throw the touchdown, it's probably Davante Adams. Still 5 touchdowns his last 5 games, 10 of the last 17 with Aaron Rodgers. I think that it would not shock me if the Jets' only real goal this game is just to get Aaron Rodgers that 500th touchdown. In fact, maybe even to spite him and get him out of here. Go off to retirement. We are ready to move on. Take your boy Davante with you. So I'm not playing just the Adams touchdown because I don't need the juice anymore. But give me the under 39.5 with the Adams touchdown. Now we got negative correlation because there's only so many points you can get when you're under 39.5. With the Adams touchdown is plus 440. And again, we need that touchdown early in the game. So under 39.5 with a first Adams touchdown is plus 1,400. So those are the angles there. Give me that 500 touchdown. If it does happen, make it go to Davante Adams and then nothing else the rest of the game.
Yeah, at that point, you could, do some fun things with the under and Davante first touchdown or first team touchdown or first half. There's certain angles to probably take there. But all right, let's get to the final game here. Ravens and Browns. And as we are recording this podcast, Bailey Zappi sounds like he will now be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns for this one, actually. And it looks like that Baltimore is up to a 20-point favorite. Now, that would be the largest spread in any game since October of 2021, when Kyler Murray was a 20.5-point favorite against Davis Mills. And, pretty crazy for it to be at this number at this time. And I believe this is going to be, maybe the largest line ever for a final week of the regular season. So expectations have never been higher. What are you doing with this Baltimore-Cleveland game?
Yeah, here we are at the end of the regular season. It's my last pick of the regular season. We're going back to the first game on the slate, and I want the first score on the slate. Give me the Derrick Henry first touchdown, plus 305. So this game stinks. We all know the Ravens are going to run the Browns off the field. I think it's hilarious that Bailey Zappi comes in for Dorian Thompson-Robinson and the line moves against him. Just retire, buddy. You're not an NFL quarterback. If you're replacing DTR and the line moves against you, we had the DTR mineshaft last week. We hit that. Can't do anymore because the team total for Cleveland is 11.5 this week. So good luck with that. I looked at Baltimore first half. We know that's a good Lamar Jackson thing. But here's the thing. If Baltimore rolls early and if the Browns can't score, why not just bet first touchdown? So here's the one player incentive that I'm backing this week, other than I guess Adams a little bit. Derrick Henry is one off the lead for rushing touchdowns for the league for the season. We had that one 15 or more touchdowns plus 550. We're one away there. He's one off Jamal Lewis's team record for Baltimore set back 2 decades ago. I think they get him that touchdown, and he's been a scoring machine this season. First 11 games of the season, he scored every single game. Then he went scoreless for 4 games. Then last week, he scored the first touchdown. In fact, I don't bet first touchdowns. I had to look this up for it. Derrick Henry is the league leader in first touchdowns. Last week was his 7th time this season that he had the first touchdown in a game. There's only 3 other guys in the NFL with even 5 first touchdowns, and then everyone else is below that. Derrick Henry has done that almost half of the games the Ravens have played this season. So, plus 305 for that first touchdown. And then here's the last escalator on what's already a 300 pick. Remember from earlier this year, when Henry's team wins, he gets 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Well, we know they're winning. This is the surest win of the season. So, Derrick Henry looking pretty good lately. It's a windy game. It looks ugly. You're just trying to run down the clock and get the win and get out of here. Last 2 weeks, Pittsburgh and Houston, Derrick Henry against good defenses, over 300 yards, 6.1 yards a carry. No surprise, because if you look at Henry splits year by year, December is his best month, 5.2 yards a carry, except January, 5.9, only 4 games, but he's averaging 144 yards a game in January for his career, including his career high, 250, came in January. So, 100 yards and 2 scores for Derrick Henry. He's done that 22 times in 134 games, but all but 2 of those times came into wins. So you look at just wins, which again, we know they're winning. This is the surest win on the schedule. 77 Derrick Henry wins. 20 times he's had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's over a quarter of those games. We get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns at plus 550. So that's the first escalator. And then back to the first touchdown. Henry 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of which is the first touchdown. 11-1 odds. That's it. That's the last escalator. We end where we start. We start where we end. It's pizza money. Hopefully we hit some of these long shot crazy escalators.
Yeah, I have Derrick Henry most rushing touchdowns this year, which has been an absolute sweat and comes down to this exact moment in this exact game. So let's hopefully we all cash together. All right, well, that's it. That is the regular season. I honestly cannot wait for Sunday night. We will do our recap podcast where we go over the entire slate on what happens on Saturday and Sunday. And this one's going to be a wild one. I'm expecting some upsets, some really, really crazy stuff. Hopefully it is a fun week 18. All right. So that'll be the Action Network podcast for week 18 best bets episode. Do not forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app to see more of our Action Network contributors. Plus you can track your own bets. Also, check out the Action Network Discord server. Chop it up with experts. I'm on there, fellow gamblers, ton of people chatting it up through games. There is a link in the description of this podcast. And do not miss our Week 18 betting preview episode with Stuckey and Raybun, which is out now. And like I said, we will be back Sunday night for the recap episode. Thank you for listening. Good luck with your bets and enjoy the slate this weekend. Last Scott Hansen, last red zone. Enjoy it. See you later, guys.